I think in retrospect, I was probably having too much fun in university to get serious about ranking high and making real money. But at least the aspiration was there. I did some years on Wall Street with Citigroup or Citibank. So I was even in training at banking thinking about, how do I get out of here? How do I go into the quote unquote real world? And the first venture of my own was in 2010. It was the reason I left New York. And it was at the time Canada's first and ultimately largest daily deals business. So if you're familiar with Groupon and that wave of deal sites, we left that first sort of startup experience, which is about a 4-year ebb and flow, walking away thinking there's got to be a smarter way to scale e-commerce companies. Because at the time, that business, our first venture, was backed by some big capital, big expectations. The space fizzled, and therefore the expectation from the venture crowd was very different. No more money coming in to support it, clean it up, exit it at any cost, and let's get it over with. And so the idea came along for Emerge with this notion that with the rise of Shopify and other e-commerce enablement software companies and technology companies, there was starting to be this new world of bootstrap little profitable e-commerce businesses all over the place. And so it was that idea that instead of going and throwing a boatload of capital at a bunch of losses to maybe make it one day, why not go buy stuff that's already working today?
Yep.
And that was the essence of Emerge as it started. Consumers are fickle and they leave you if you don't do a great job. And so you can't possibly just buy up 10, 20, 50 of these things and sit back and raise prices. You actually got to fight for each of these things.
What can you say to people that are looking to launch new e-commerce brands?
E-commerce is about hands-on combat. It's a brand-driven model. E-commerce is one of the most difficult cutthroat sectors of all. It's a really low-margin business. It is extremely demanding. It takes like crazy amount of grit to get to a certain level of scale. And from what I've seen, even if you do it in a bootstrap way and say you make $1 million in profit one day, you gotta take that money and pour it back into inventory. And so the amount of money you can take out of the business as a bootstrapper is really low. Hi, my name is Ghassan Halazon, and I'm the CEO and founder of Emerge Commerce. We are an acquirer and operator of e-commerce brands across North America. Today on the StartWell Podcast, I'll be sharing a little bit about my journey over the past 15 years of buying, building, selling, and restructuring e-commerce brands, all of our learnings and mistakes, and giving you an unfiltered view of all we've been through.
So Ghassan, second time at StartWell. Welcome back. I think the last time you were here, you were in our other studio recording a podcast as a guest with one of our clients, right?
Right. Yep.
And now that you've seen a little bit more on the walk up to the 4th floor, we were talking off camera a little bit. What's your take on StartWell, by the way? What's your lens on what we have here going on?
Yeah, as I shared with you walking in, I was like, there's definitely sort of a vibe that I resonate with. It's a boutique-y sort of vibe, and it feels like a place with soul. That's what I sort of thought the minute I walked in. There's the lighting is perfect, the high ceilings, the all white lobby, the coffee, the whole experience. Is something I've had a pretty crazy day today, if you haven't noticed, and walking in was pretty relaxing, I will say.
Honestly, and this is the thing that we kind of strive towards, right? Is that like creating a place for people, the third place. It's not an office, it's not the home, but for the most part, everyone professionally can like relax and be themselves here, right? Which I think in business is very needed.
Yeah.
It can get combative and crazy. And some of that we'll dig into just now. So, okay, I want to get the backstory on career-wise, what brought you to running a public company. But
Right.
let's start like at the beginning. What was the first thing you did for money?
The first thing I did for money was back in university. I studied at McGill University.
Hey, my alma mater.
There
That's
you
where I
go.
went. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I signed up to one of those student painting franchise companies. It was the Quebec-based company, sort of franchising for students to run around and paint. And that was my first experience. I think obviously I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was eager, if you want to extrapolate, I was eager at a very early age
Yeah.
to run my own business, to be entrepreneurial. I think in retrospect, I was probably having too much fun in university to get serious about
Business.
ranking high and making real money. But at least the aspiration was there. The idea of running a business and knocking on doors, and I did some of that, and we
Yeah.
painted a few houses or apartments, along the way. And
What were you
you,
studying at McGill?
Bachelor of Commerce was like sort of.
And what year was this?
It was 2002 to 2006.
Okay, so you were right when I left. So I went to McGill in 98 to 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And I started in a BCom. And my story is that like within 5 minutes, I was like, get me the hell out of here. I didn't want to be in the Bronfman building for every class.
Right.
And it took me 2 years because of my grades, because I in the first semester, first year, I just didn't go to any management classes. Like
Right.
as soon as I looked at a T account, I was like, this is not for me, This is all book stuff. I can learn book stuff outside of university.
Yeah.
So I jetted out of there and I went into arts and I did a double major in religious studies, comparative religion.
No.
Yeah, Hinduism and Buddhism. And then the other thing was a multidisciplinary study, which at McGill is like as avant-garde as you can go. I don't know how I got a degree in this, but in looking at the evolution of electronic music in urban context.
Come on.
Pretty crazy, jazzy stuff,
Credit to them for offering such.
Honestly, yeah. But yeah, I get your point. I mean, Montreal was the place. It wasn't so much about McGill, it was about the city, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I always say we had some of my best friends were studying in, Miami and LA and some of these like really cool places to be.
Right.
And I just remember spring break in the US was, sometime in Feb, I guess similar to where we had it. I don't know if it was the exact time, but they would all leave Miami and LA to come party in Montreal in February when it was freezing
That's how good it
cold.
is.
That's how good life was in Montreal.
So true, man. Amazing. But yeah, what a place to get inspired and get started. And so post that, like as you got a job, what did you do the traditional management thing and like were you a consultant?
Yeah, no, I did some years on Wall Street with Citigroup or Citibank. I always remember that during the early part of it, during training, there was a kind of a 2-month training program, and we would sit in a sort of a classroom, if you will. And I would always sit in the back, and I had my little notebook, and I would often be drawing and writing different ideas. So I was even in training at banking thinking about, how do I get out of here? How do I go into the quote unquote real world and do my own thing?
Right.
And
Right.
I know you and I we're talking a bit about, the StartWell world and the different directions you can take it at. But interestingly, early days, I really had some aspirations in the boutique hotel world, and I had some family in that business back in the Middle East, and so I was always intrigued and interested in hotels. But anyway, I was even as early as my early days in training in banking.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, okay, how do I get started?
And what was it? What was the first kind of venture of your own?
The first venture of my own was in 2010. It was the reason I left New York and left Wall Street, and it was at the time Canada's first and ultimately largest daily deals business. So if you're familiar with Groupon and that wave of deal sites that popped up back in the day,
Sure, yeah.
we were the largest player in Canada for some years. And I basically, the way it started was I met a couple of I met a couple of young guns that were taking a stab at it here in Toronto, and I
Not
flew.
red flag deals.
No,
Okay.
actually, not red flag deals. We have some history with them. It's funny you say that, but a couple of guys, young, early 20s. I wasn't even mid 20s back then,
Yeah.
and I flew in. We had great chemistry, and uh, before you know it, we all quit our jobs and we partnered on this venture, and we saw very, very quick and aggressive traction in this model. I think the allure back then was that the deal space didn't really require much like tech.
Yeah.
It was us running around sourcing local deals from restaurants and spas. So it was very sales driven, which is something we and I had strength in, and natural tendencies. And then it was sort of who would get the word out faster and build out a database. So things were simple back then, and that's the exact reason why that model was cloned hundreds of times. But I think we're fortunate enough to kind of separate ourselves from the pack. We went on Dragons then before it was kind of a thing, and we did all sorts of guerrilla marketing tactics to get the word out, and then we ultimately ended up being a venture-backed company, and we scaled that business to 120 employees. Maybe it was 50-60 million in top line at the peak. Unfortunately, though, the Groupon model fizzled, and Groupon itself was a victim of its own success. The deal space was very high churn. It didn't really work well long term for merchants, and it was sort of attracting sort of a deal hunting audience. And there were some tough lessons learned, and many war stories along the way. But we ultimately, kind of merged with our largest competitor, kind of cleaned that business up to the best that we could, and packaged it up for a sale. But we came out of that, learned a lot, and much stronger for what was to come next.
Which was
Emerge, which is where we are today, right?
Oh, this is interesting. Okay, I thought there'd be some more. Not that there aren't enough lumps and battle scars out of that experience, because it sounds pretty drama. To have to see something, go
right
up and down again,
right.
But then what's the man? Okay, so let's talk about Emerge, because what was your setting out to create it? Like, what was the vision for what it was going to be? Because this is also, am I right that this is during pandemic, pre-pandemic?
Right, pre-pandemic is when we launched. I think just kind of backtracking a second, we left that first sort of startup experience, which is about a 4-year ebb and flow, walking away thinking there's got to be a smarter way to scale e-commerce companies. Because at the time, that business, our first venture, was backed by some big capital, big expectations. The space fizzled, and therefore the expectation from the venture crowd was very different. No more money coming in to support it, clean it up, exit it at any cost, and let's get it over with.
And what year is that?
This was around 2013.
Okay.
2014. Yeah, something like that. So I kind of walked away thinking, wait a minute, like this idea of just raising boatloads of venture capital and maybe being 1 out of 10 startups that fly high, and if you're not, you're doomed. Like that's a broken model. Like, it may not be for the VCs, but it's a broken model for startups to think, you want to be opportunistic and adventurous, but if you think you're going to be that 1 out of X that flies high, then probably the probability isn't on your side.
No, it's not.
So I said, how can we reverse engineer a more sustainable, profitable model in e-commerce, which is notorious for low margins and a lot of losses along the way, which is typical for Silicon Valley-backed companies, right? And so the idea came along for Emerge with this notion that with the rise of Shopify and other e-commerce enablement software companies and technology companies, there was starting to be this new world of bootstrap little profitable e-commerce businesses all over the place, right? So whereas back in the day you couldn't find a 4, 7, 9 person shop with $1 million in EBITDA doing their own thing, never having raised capital, and primed for a potential acquisition,
Sure.
where we can buy rather than build from the ground up, because it was a more cost-effective way to acquire proven platforms, even if they were relatively small. Um, and so it was that idea that instead of going and throwing a boatload of capital at a bunch of losses to maybe make it one day, why not go buy stuff that's already working
Sure.
today?
Yep.
And that was the essence of Emerge, as it started.
And this is what, sorry, is it as early as 2013, 2014?
Right. No, so it probably a couple of years out. By 2016 is really when we made our first acquisition at Emerge.
This is still before revenue back, finance for that sector was a
Right.
thing, right?
Right. It was well before that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was sort of my early vision, to roll up in e-commerce, profitable, businesses.
This is also probably a couple of years, I don't know, you tell me, before Shopify had that Shopify store marketplace.
Shopify was a thing. We knew of it. May have not been anywhere near where it was by the time it,
No, but I mean the marketplace that they have for
Oh, right. Yeah.
stores.
Yeah. Well before
Right?
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this idea of like asset roll-ups in the e-com space,
Yeah.
it was almost like hypothetical at this time.
It was basically non-existent.
Yeah.
And listen, like I think there was a fair amount. There was probably, like, as far as I was able to find, about $20 billion poured into e-commerce consolidation and roll-ups. And even that in it and of itself has taken many turns, because not all models are equal. But I will consider, and I will say that, we certainly were founding members of the e-commerce roll-up space, if that's what you're getting to.
Yeah.
We certainly were. And I don't know anyone who started by, I'm sure there were some, but like I don't know of any that were started with this idea of buying up e-commerce businesses sooner than Emerge.
Okay, so then the initial formula for the company, I mean, the mandate was there, but how did you raise the capital to go out and try and buy things?
Yeah. So initially, we started in our early DNA, which was the deal space. We went and picked up an asset from Torstar, the parent company of the Toronto Star. And we acquired a company called Shop.ca out of a CCAA process, out of a bankruptcy, essentially. So we were kind of piecing together distressed assets, I would say, in our early iteration. And the reason for that is very simple. Those were the cheapest assets to pick up to get us started, because it was really hard to raise capital to get going, to buy a bunch of businesses, because no one understood it. No one was doing it. And we came out of a really difficult situation in my earlier startup. So the best we could do was go after nitpicking, like, or sort of hunting for distressed businesses that we felt could be worth more than we could find. Distressed is a really difficult place to be. I would not advise it. I mean, it's a lot of work. And whether it's a $500,000 acquisition or a $50 million acquisition, it's just too much work, so you might as well buy stuff that's bigger and more meaningful.
So what was that early experience with Shop.ca?
We picked little pieces up, and
but was it just a website, or was there a company?
It was a small marketplace that was much larger a while back, prior to it going through a restructuring. But it was Shop.ca had raised $70 million or so, and was supposed to be the Amazon of Canada, which in and of itself is a really tricky proposition.
Yeah.
And
geo-specific,
right,
marketplace website.
Right.
How do you own the geo on the internet? It's a big problem.
And anything against Amazon, like head to head, is tricky to begin
right,
with.
because they'll just burn as much money as they want to.
It was an audacious vision, but I think at the end of the day, obviously, it didn't pan out. And we were fortunate to pick up those assets. I don't even think those early years were rounding errors in our world today, because we were, like, as I said, just grabbing on to few pieces of businesses that we could get a hold of and raise capital on a per deal basis. So we'd go sign an LOI, run back to investors, say, hey, we think we should buy this, and then we think we should buy that. We just this thing landed on our lap. And so those first few years were just a lot of scraping things
running
together.
around to try and just
Tough,
strap
a
it
lot of work, tough, and underfunded, even worse, right? So extremely hectic and stressful years. But we managed to do quite a bit with very little early and gain trust. And by taking some of these distressed businesses and turning them around, for example, WagJag, which was a business owned by Torstar, it's kind of like one of the Groupon of Ontario kind of thing. So kind of similar to my old business. So we started there, we proved ourselves, we gained some trust, and then the deals started getting bigger. So eventually we got to Underpar, which is the leader in golf experiences and tee times. And that, for example, was a $9 million acquisition. And so we would start raising capital and matching it with debt and going out and acquiring these bigger and bigger businesses. And I think things really took a turn around the time the pandemic happened, because for a moment, e-commerce became the hottest thing on earth. Everyone was locked down. Everyone was shopping online, and businesses in e-commerce and parallel industries like Zoom and kind of Peloton, all the
Everyone was
the
like
big
infinite scale opportunity.
right,
now.
right, infinite TAM, exactly. And we were at the heart of it, and money started getting thrown at us because we'd done a few deals and things were working in our favor.
Right.
And that's where the allure and the temptation of going public, especially in Toronto, the Toronto Venture Exchange, and sort of that whole ecosystem that exists to take companies public via reverse mergers. So it was presented to us, and we had some investors.
Back like a
Yeah, exactly. And we said we're here to buy bigger businesses, and if we really want to do this, this is it. This is our chance. So it was very much a sense that we were going to get top valuation, premiums. We were going to raise capital easily. We were going to go out and acquire big and growing companies. So there was a lot to be excited about.
Sure, yeah.
And I want to say we went public, TSXV Ecom, on the venture in late 2020, so at the peak of the pandemic. And so at the time of going public, I think we had $30 million in gross sales, what we call gross merchandise sales, and about $10 million in revenue, net revenue. And so by venture standards, somewhat small or medium sized.
Sure.
Within the course of that first year, we scaled the business up from 30 million to 120 million in gross sales and about 55 to 60 million in revenue at the peak. And we went out and we bought bigger and bigger businesses in the pet space, in the outdoor gear space. Obviously, we were in experiences, travel, golf, grocery. And so we kind of built this eclectic brand portfolio. And the idea was all of them are profitable. All of them are growing very fast. What could possibly go wrong?
And wait, so we'll come back to this because that's a good cliffhanger. The capitalization, how did that work when you went public? Like, how much capital came back into the company to be able to buy these assets?
Yeah, so
how much did you raise from the public market?
So through a few rounds around the time of the go public and shortly thereafter, we raised about $20 million. We matched them with another, I want to say 20 to 25 million in debt.
Okay.
So we had a decent amount of capital, and the way we were structuring these acquisitions and payouts was, let's say 50% or so up front.
Okay.
Another 25 or 30% over 3 to 5 years, in terms of, consideration and earnout and deferred consideration and performance earnout and stuff like that. And maybe a sliver of equity, like a sweetener of some sort, 10 to 20%. So that didn't mean we had to pay all of it up front.
Sure.
Right. And so the 45 would even go further in terms of our ability to go out and buy.
Scrappy.
Yeah, it was scrappy. And actually the structuring piece, I think we got right, and it actually protected us in downside scenarios we talk about soon, as we'll talk about. But I think what didn't go in our favor was the macro. So suddenly you find ourselves as we were the largest e-commerce aggregator in Canada and one of the largest in North America. But the timing was tough because everything that we bought turned out to be at the peak of the pandemic. And as you know, the cycle completely reversed, and all these artificial highs across all of e-commerce and parallel industries, everyone sort of came down from that high. It was a really difficult hangover.
Right.
And the issue is when you finance these acquisitions with debt like we did.
Right, and cash flow dries up.
Right, but at the same exact time, interest rates went up to astronomical levels too, right, globally. So the combination of declining revenues and profits with rising interest rates on a debt-fueled roll-up were catastrophic, right? And so suddenly it didn't matter that our profits or our EBITDA was 4 or 5 million when our interest payments needed to be 6 or 7 million, right? So that's the conundrum.
Yeah.
And then added to that, from a people's perspective, imagine, I'm the CEO and founder of Emerge, so I'm sitting at the holding company level, and I have all these disgruntled CEOs of the portfolio companies that aren't going to reach their earnouts anymore.
Right.
And now they have to tell their teams that whatever they promised them in turn wasn't going to happen. So it's essentially a Titanic that needed some major shifts and adjustments.
How'd you keep it afloat? Or you had to cull some stuff?
Well, I think the first piece of the equation in what was ultimately a successful multi-year turnaround that we're finally coming out with, the first piece of the equation was to 100% be sure that I was up for the challenge, right?
Of course.
Because when you're sitting, to give you a sense, when you're sitting against a mountain of 32 million in debt, which is where we were.
Yep.
And with plummeting revenues and profits across the portfolio, and the share price that was once 150 $200 million market cap at the peaks, coming all the way down to borderline bankrupt, right?
Yeah, so you couldn't recap or raise from the market,
right? Not at those levels, right?
Yeah.
And so look at all of that. The first step of the equation is to say, okay, am I up for this? Am I ready to really roll my sleeves up and fight, right? Because if I didn't have the heart or the drive to do it, no one else around me would do it. Everyone around me wrote it off. Everyone, even sort of close, sort of mentors, friends of mine, saying, look, you're an entrepreneur. You're gonna get back up and do something else, and everyone will understand, right? I don't know what it was about the challenge and almost the sense of responsibility to wake up, in the morning and say, no, that's it. We're gonna dig our way out of this.
Yeah.
And I think the minute I made that decision, and the minute I made sure that my top lieutenants and partners were on the same page about what we needed to do and why we were doing it, I think somehow magically everything started to fall into place. But a lot had to happen. It wasn't like an overnight, we're going to do it, and we just did it.
Right.
And just to fast track to where we are today, we took 32 million in net debt down to about 4 million.
Wow.
We did so by selling off a bunch of non-core businesses and doubling down where we were winning.
Okay.
And then in those focused areas, we had to rethink how we incentivize staff, the core group that remained, and how to reignite growth, because we couldn't live in a world where we couldn't continuously decline forever. We had to kind of start coming back up.
Right.
And I always say the hardest thing in business is not only reversing a negative growth trend, but doing so while you're also becoming profitable. And we did both.
Yep.
And that didn't happen by accident. Like that was methodical, and it took a lot out of us to get there.
Yeah, and it's a continuum, right? So there's no there.
Right. Right. But you know what? Where we are today is 100% in offense mode finally, right? Like I can say it because we're not, I'll never say we're out of the woods because I don't want to look like an idiot if anything goes wrong that we didn't expect.
Well, you can't control the market.
You can't control the market.
So the trickiest thing is like, I guess, okay, so I got to ask this. At this point though, like, so how many brands are you operating?
Yeah, so by going back on the offense, we made an acquisition last week and last year. I was about to say last year, but then I said there's also another one last week.
Yeah.
So we're back on offense, fact, okay? But
which means you're growing your portfolio.
We're acquiring companies, we're growing the portfolio. We have 2 full years of growth, and 2025 was our first profitable cash flow positive year, which is something every startup aspires to, but many never reach.
Yeah, man.
Right. And so we're back.
Yeah,
we're definitely back. We're excited about this new vision. We're building up again. But to give you a sense of the portfolio, we had 9 brands at the peak. We now have about 5 brands.
Okay.
I can tell you, we at our peak, even when we were 100-something million, we weren't cash flow positive, right? We are now cash flow positive. I would take the cash flow positive over the 100 million,
100%, especially with this debt reduction.
Right. And, magically interest rates are coming down now. We have a tighter, leaner team. We have about $1 million of revenue per employee, which is extremely, lean and kind of best in class, at least in e-commerce. And so I think things have really come together, but not without a lot of pain and mistakes and learnings along the way.
It sounds like also your operating model now has become kind of refined. So rather than just like going out, getting some cash to buy some stuff to build around it and maybe have operating teams with each brand, maybe you've centralized your kind of controls on how to operate multi-brand from one team. Is this correct?
You know what? It was by necessity, but I think the conclusion was that what we call Emerge 1.0, which was the original iteration of buying a diversified, eclectic group of brands that had nothing to do with each other,
right,
was a flawed experiment in the sense that there are other businesses, so the most famous of which is Berkshire Hathaway with Warren Buffett, and of course in Canada, Constellation Software, buying up a bunch of niche software companies. So there were models of this diversified holdco. And the reason it didn't work in e-commerce is very simple. E-commerce is about hands-on combat. It's a brand-driven model. Mm-hmm. It's a community, right? It means you have to fight daily for their attention. You don't have the benefit of a subscription model where you sit back, raise prices on a government contract, and they don't even notice that the price is up, right? Because it's such a small line item on their huge bill somewhere. This is e-commerce. You know, these are consumers that are vouching with their wallets that you are the brand for them. You're the kind of service or product for them exactly at that moment in time, and you got to still be there every single time through the subscription or through the marketplace. And so for that reason, consumers are fickle and they leave you if you don't do a great job. And so you can't possibly just buy up 10, 20, 50 of these things and sit back and raise prices. You actually got to fight for each of these things.
This is it. Yeah. Like pre-pandemic, I think the assumption in North America, it's interesting because it's like, I don't know if you've drawn a corollary with the like 1999 situation, the boom bust of the end of the 90s, where you had all those early first stage e-com companies. Was pets.com one of them, right?
Right.
All these guys, like, I think Amazon's the only one that like duked it out of that downturn and they continue to grow. But like, I think everyone has been always kind of enamored with the opportunity to like win repeat business because you're the best and the easiest and the cheapest.
Right.
But being the best, the easiest, and the cheapest is incredibly difficult.
Right.
And there's always going to be a competition in the race to the bottom.
Yeah.
So you're right. The brand is really everything that you can kind of rely on in order to like ensure that customers know who you are and trust you and stay with you for some reason.
And that's the analysis we ran. I mean, when we looked at all of our businesses and brands to decide where are we going to double down on, because we wanted fewer, more compelling opportunities that we can win big at over time.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example with True Local, our meat and seafood subscription from local farmers. We have a customer lifetime value of $2,000. compared to a customer acquisition cost of $125, which for those who don't fully follow is an extremely lucrative lifetime value relative to the cost of acquiring these customers.
Why is it only $2,000 though?
Right. I mean,
is that because it's a young brand?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like it's a young brand, but B, we're growing fast. So a lot of the customers coming in are some of the newer ones. $2,000 CLTV is
that's like a year's meat. Is that it?
Right. Yeah. But a lot of our customers are sort of in their first year as well because we're growing so fast.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
But if you look at longer cohorts, of course it's way higher.
Yeah.
This is sort of the average.
Cost of user acquisition is your point. Is that like it's a good business because you can bring people in the door at an affordable rate and they're going to stay with you.
Yeah, you're going to make way more money. If you bring someone in for $125 and they spend $2,000, that's extremely lucrative, right? Now, obviously, $2,000 hopefully grows to $4,000, $6,000 over the years, of course. So I think that is a very favorable ratio, and it really, like, I'm not trying to get mathematical here, but it really embodies what True Local is about. Sticking with local. Obviously, at a time like this, buy Canadian, support local is a huge theme. Those are tailwinds. That's the icing on the cake.
Right.
We were very serious about making sure our suppliers, our local farmers, got the technology, got the distribution that they were so desperate to get, and giving customers a healthy, local, convenient way to get their meat and seafood. And so all of this is to say, when we bet on True Local, we bet on the community, we bet on the mission we're on, right? To connect people to the source, to these local farmers. And it's a mission-driven brand and business, and therefore it has legs beyond, and therefore also has pricing power from a business perspective. It has great customer experience. So there are many things as to why we chose that to be our flagship brand for grocery, which is one of our two main verticals. On the other side, we now have a 3-brand, 400,000 member portfolio under our golf vertical.
Okay.
And this is a business we had, very early DNA in. We had some amazing leadership on the team running this vertical. And now we have synergy. So to give you an idea, when we were buying a pet business and an outdoor gear business, there's very little in common. There's no synergy.
Of course.
But now when we're buying an experiences business, then a marketplace, then an offline business, we're leveraging this captive audience and upselling them and cross-selling them. And that's been beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're all about focus and about real synergy. So if we, buy something, it has to relate to what we're doing. But we have two amazing opportunities.
So food and golf, is that what?
Food and golf, right?
Okay.
And with their own leadership teams. And just last week, we made our first kind of enablement acquisition. At least we signed the definitive agreement. Hopefully by the time this is out, the deal is closed.
Yeah.
But we acquired a company called Rollups, which is a customer acquisition referral technology. So think of it as a layer sitting below grocery and golf.
Yeah.
And this technology, A, is recurring revenue. B is B2B, so it comes with like 500 clients who use it. But we get to use this technology and apply it to our own brands.
Referral marketing.
Right.
So like
contests, giveaways, like leveraging those templates to run stuff cost effectively and bring lead gens in. So to your point about lowering the CPA or lowering the CAC of the customer, we bring through the door. So the idea is that we're building an enablement layer that both comes with cash flow today. Okay. So it's like an $800,000 EBITDA business. But not only that, it's not just a financial gain. It's also something we can leverage in our portfolio, in our toolkit to drive better CLTV and lower CAC.
Interesting. I think we're going to see a lot more of this sort of stuff, hey? Like, I mean, outside of your business, but in general, companies buying kind of early stage software companies to save them from like the difficulty of scaling without the possibility of venture capital. You see a lot of that. Vibe coding.
Right.
Pushing kind of conventional software companies into this like affordable M&A zone.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's really interesting. But that's interesting. Why did you double down on this as an acquisition target specifically when you could just go out and like get any referral engine software off the shelf and be a customer of someone else?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, this isn't like a very early stage startup. It's a 10-year business.
Only earning $800,000 a year?
Yeah, but listen, it's a bootstrap style business. It's very stable. It cash flows. It comes with 500 clients that are loyal and growing. And so for us, it was really just an opportunity to hit two birds with one stone. We get the technology for a team and our brands.
Yep.
B, it comes with the financial advantages, the cash flow and the client base and all of that. And C, and I didn't mention this, but it was a very opportunistically priced. So it was a deal that landed on our lap. There's only so much I can say, but let's just say the price that we got for it was very attractive.
Sure.
Relative to building from the ground up or going and, taking years to get to 500 clients. And this comes with a team. It comes with a business that, cash flows, and it comes with technology that's been, years in the making. And by the way, they too leverage the latest and greatest in AI, and
Sure.
So they're at the forefront of this stuff,
Okay,
right?
good, good.
And we love that about them.
How have you found in your two verticals that you've drilled down on,
Mhm.
right? In your golf and meat.
I know.
It's so
I know.
funny. So you're not Australian? What?
Yeah. Yeah.
In golf and meat, how have you guys found in operating those referrals playing into your channel growth, like leading up to this point? Has it been something that has been a handicap where you see opportunity, or has it been something that is organic and you want to put tools into to accelerate?
Yeah, as we were diligencing Viral Loops, we used their application on True Local. So True Local was celebrating 10 years in business, and we did a sort of a 10-year anniversary contest. And you can design. The cool thing about it is you can design the referral program that you want. It's kind of like let's think of it as a GPT for referrals. You tell it, hey, I want to create a contest that allows my members to refer others, and if those guys join, you get extra points, blah blah blah, right? Like
Sure.
that's the idea behind Viral Loops. And so we tested it on True Local, and we
You
got
can gamify the referral
right.
function.
It's exactly what it is.
Right.
And we got thousands and thousands of signups, and then referrals, shares, and ultimately new customers. That's the goal here, right?
Cool.
Like we're gonna give away a year of True Local, which is $1,000 or $2,000.
Yeah.
But we're gonna get 50 new customers, right? And the CLTV on each of those is 200, right? So the math really checks out, just to use an example.
Sure.
In terms of like referrals, I think we in general take a very keen interest in word of mouth, because finding the right customer is way more important than finding more customers.
Yeah.
And so especially with something like True Local. So the CLTV of customers tends to go way up when they actually do care about local. They're not just coming for a deal. They care about local farmers. They care
Yeah.
about the mission. They care about Canada, right? These are very important embodiments of a great true local customer that endures.
Mhm.
And to endure, for us, there's no better way than for someone who already has bought into that to tell someone like them about it.
Totally.
And that's kind of general, but even more so when it's a mission-driven
Oh
company.
yeah, for sure.
And so we really think this sort of technology is the way to go. And so we want to be doing, maybe not monthly, but like, quarterly, like giveaways and contests around pushing, gamifying the people that are, let's call it the VIP cohort.
Mhm.
We want to unlock the next VIPs, their friends, their families, etc., because it works for them so well, and they're most prone to telling people about it. And I'll give you a cool example of how much of a power user base we have. We were giving out certain dollar amounts for folks to fill out a yearly survey. And I told the team, I have a feeling if you don't give any money out, they'll still fill it out in the same numbers, because very engaged base in terms of the annual survey that we do.
Right.
And it's a long one. And so that's why they would give some, whatever, like, some amount of dollars out to fill it out. So we did a test and we removed the dollars, and we got the same exact number.
Of course.
And they care because
Incenting any passionate consumer with cash will actually tarnish their, trust in the
Right.
brand.
Right. That's even, the point I hadn't even thought about. But like,
Yeah.
conceptually, I think that's how much of a power user base we have when we've raised prices, because the price of beef is skyrocketing, and chicken to some extent.
It's crazy, man. Like I just paid, this is crazy. I'm ashamed to admit this, okay? My wife will laugh at me. She was away with her friends on holiday, okay? Or someone's birthday. So all the ladies go off to like Mexico for the birthday. And I'm putting my daughter to bed, right? Telling her a story, and I hear my wife comes in the door after her holiday and she screams, "The meat's rotting!" And I was like, that's the first thing you're gonna say when you come in. I'm like, what meat? And then she comes up and she says, "There's a $50 ribeye from the butcher sitting in the fridge that expired 4 days ago, and you gotta get it in the organics." And that's literally like so embarrassing to even say out loud to myself, to say I threw $50 in the organics bin.
Right.
That's how expensive meat is.
Yeah, it is.
It's nuts.
It is. It's nuts. And you know, when we did have to, you know, we try not to raise prices if we don't have to, but if we have to, and it, you know, everyone understands it, and it's the world we're in. And just like when you go to grocery stores, prices go through. But you know, some would argue some of that's not with the best intention sometimes. But when we've raised prices, I pay very close attention to the feedback, and I ask for specifics from the customer experience team. I say, send me all the comments we got that day on the price increase message. And you'd be surprised how many thank yous we get for raising prices, because they get it. We've earned their trust.
Right.
And that's a big deal.
Yeah,
and,
it's an honest raise to the price.
And then the team sees it and they're proud about what we do. And that's exciting for us. And so that's kind of the conclusion, long drawn one, but the conclusion here is that if you're in e-commerce or retail or consumer broadly, focus is key. Why? Because you can't possibly conquer the experience and honor the customer and the merchant and the team all in one without extreme focus and vision and drive. So diversification, like too broadly, makes that almost impossible. And that's what we learned.
Especially when you're not capitalized to the point where you can assemble, you know, rock star operational units for each brand to do what you've done, but per brand, right?
Right.
Like, it's too expensive.
Yeah. I also want to say, like, you know, the businesses we acquired were actually pretty damn good businesses that, despite them coming down from the peak, were still worth many millions of dollars. And that's the reason we were able to sell them and pay down a bunch of debt.
Okay.
So we actually didn't buy a bunch of crap, to be honest with you. I know that's how people generalize. And actually, that's how I generalize it. Like, I've come to accept we sold non-core businesses, which means a bunch of crap, to focus on the stuff that was working.
But you were able to sell them.
Yeah. It's just, we thought we could win bigger and better with True Local as a brand, and with our golf business. We have great leadership.
Well, so now I got to ask this question, okay? So if Emerge 2.0 is focused on these two verticals, how does that define the description of what Emerge is, and what does Emerge 3.0 look like?
Right. So ironically, the way we actually officially call it is Emerge 1.0 was this diversified beast. And we just talked about that. We call Emerge 2.0, which was the last few years of turnaround mode and focus inwards. And 3.0, which is where we are today, is sort of back on the offensive, acquiring again, but only strategically.
Meaning within those two verticals.
Within grocery or golf or anything that enables them. Correct. You got it. Which we call Emerge B2B.
Okay.
So that's the 3.0 vision we're on. And I don't think it's a 4.0. It's more like a 3B and 3C from here, because it's more like, okay, True Local might go out and acquire 5 to 7 competitors over the next 3 years. We might acquire another B2B business, for example, corporate gifting, to leverage True Local as a beautiful corporate gift.
Sure.
We'll sell $1 million.
On the 70s, that was a big thing, you know?
Right.
Have you done the analysis on like the history of the Canadian meat market? Like, no?
I have not.
Oh, it's worth looking at. And I only know this because we have family history in it, where my dad had this brand called Connoisseur Meats in Calgary, I think in the 70s, that him and like 7 and 8 uncles and aunties all chipped in. This was their like escape from Africa into the 70s to Canada to be entrepreneurs to then fail miserably thing. But it was like that. This was the time when like M&M meat markets were like pretty big, because people would buy frozen for convenience.
Right.
because also like distribution logistics that we have today for delivery weren't there, right?
Of course.
And so people wouldn't be able to discern, I suppose, also the like quality concerns of having a frozen product. Like it's not exciting to like defrost a ribeye,
Right.
lose all of that wonderful natural let's call it liquid in the meat
Yeah.
in the process, right? So it's interesting. The times have changed, but it looks like, yeah, the buying habits have always sided with affordability and convenience,
Yeah.
right? It's just how that's manifested over the last few decades has changed.
And the addition of the passion towards local and local farmers and local
Yeah.
supply with everything going on, especially in the last few years. I mean, it's been a big support local has been a bigger and bigger theme as time goes by. I certainly think in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, supporting local is going to be bigger and bigger. And it's always going to be the underdog story, right? And we like ourselves a good underdog story, especially if we're part of it. And, that's where true local really shines. And we did have choices a few years back where, we could have gone Australian Wagyu or, a lot of these other cuts and places. And we chose because, again, from our surveys and speaking to customers, they really did care. It's not for everyone, right? And we don't need it to be for everyone. That's the point. But we stuck with local and we stuck with Canadian farmers, and now we're getting the benefit of it. That's why when we raise prices or we do things like this, they really understand and appreciate.
Drilling down into these verticals for a second. So on the meat thing, what about B2B?
Yeah.
Because you are B2C, right?
Yeah, and we do. As I said, corporate gifting is a growing vertical.
But I mean, I've been supplying restaurants.
Right. I mean, I think we see that as certainly somewhere on the roadmap. But I would say to this, like, we're number one in Canada for direct to consumer meat subscription. Okay. And yet our peer in the US is a company called Butcher Box.
Right.
They should be 10 times our size, but there might be like 20 or 30 times our size. And so that tells me there's a lot more to go in Canada. We're focused on Canada. We can acquire our competitors. We can grow organically, which we are for a couple of years in a row now. We've been growing really nicely. So there's a multi-$100 million opportunity in just doing what we do.
Okay.
And sometimes, as boring as that is,
no, I mean,
it's the right way to go,
for sure.
right? And I always say, like, boredom is one of the reasons people fall astray and make mistakes, because it's just the urge to do something new or buy something new into a new like that's kind of something I always remind the team, like, I know it's boring, but it's working. So
right.
Let's hang tight because it's good.
Yeah.
Like it's working.
Yeah. And then the golf thing, what's your lens on that industry in Canada?
Yeah. So by the way, we operate both in Canada and the US.
Okay.
Golf is a very interesting one. We chose, and this was the right choice a few years back when we entered the space, to focus exclusively on discounted golf products and experiences. So we don't do anything full price. And what that means is we play in the clearance world. And when you play in the clearance world in an economy like this one that's cooling/weakening, consumers are generally very deal centric.
Right.
And by the way, Underpar, the foundational asset that we acquired, was founded in the Great Recession in 2008-9. Okay.
Is that what we're calling it? The Great Recession?
Yeah, I mean, every 10, 15 years you look back, and that one was the big one, right? Because this is the new one and it's not quite as crazy. But again, like if you ask me, we've had a Great Recession every 10, 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But, we chose to do that. So now the golf world for us is, if you're looking for like the TaylorMades, the Callaways, the Adidases, the Pumas, models from last year or prior years, that's where we specialize. You don't want to play in the full price in our world because that's lower margin and it's very competitive.
Sure.
So we found ourselves a niche, much like with True Local. We're not in everything grocery. We're in meat and seafood from local farmers grocery. So the word niche is still very, very important in differentiation and not competing with the big boys. Right.
But at the same time, in golf in Canada, what are you seeing in terms of adoption of the sport? Because if there are trends of new entrants into golf, being youth or otherwise, people taking it up as a new form of recreation later in life, the interest in that kind of like pro golfer, I need the latest thing, is probably not there.
Mhm.
So a lot of opportunity.
It's very interesting. Apparently, when we acquired Under Par back in 2019, that was the original golf business that we started with. The trends were that golf was a sport in decline,
Right.
and the pandemic switched that up completely because
It's
everyone and their
open
mother was
space.
playing golf,
Yeah.
and when they were working at home, they had more freedom, and they wanted to, all of that stuff, right?
Right.
And so the sport exploded. That wasn't a good thing for us. It was actually because golf courses were so busy,
Mm.
they didn't need us to help fill out their empty slots and tee times. So that's where we canvassed into the product side of the business. We're sitting on all these members. How can we sell them something? And so
Right.
let's sell them golf equipment and apparel because they're playing golf like never before. So our businesses on the product side exploded. Now, as the economy weakened, the golf experiences side is coming back as golf courses need us more to fill out these empty slots. And on the product side, we went and acquired a business called Tee to Green last year, very opportunistically. And they specialize in a lot of the clearance outlets. They do pop-up stores, retail. So a lot of the old school, I'll call it.
Okay.
And so we have a multifaceted approach. Yeah, you're right. There are different spin-offs of golf. There's simulators. There's other things going on. There's youth. There's women is a bigger and growing part of this segment. We're not banking on golf being a growing sport. I always look at it and say, like, we have 400,000 golfers. I think in the US, there's about 30 million golfers. In Canada, there's at least a couple of million golfers. And so I'm like, I don't worry about whether 30 is going to 32 or 28. I worry about how 400 gets to 4 million,
Right.
right? That's kind of my sort of take on it right now.
Okay. Interesting. What can you say to aspiring, let's forget about this like portfolio side of things, but even people that are looking to launch new e-commerce brands, looking to take products and services to market? Are there lessons that you would relate to anyone coming to you for advice who are thinking of starting stores online?
The honest to God truth advice is, if all you want to do is start a nice little e-commerce store, the honest to God advice is don't do it. And the reason I say that is e-commerce is one of the most difficult cutthroat sectors of all. It's a really low margin business. It is extremely demanding. It takes like crazy amount of grit to get to a certain level of scale. And from what I've seen, even if you do it in a bootstrap way and say you make $1 million in profit one day, the problem with e-commerce, especially inventory based e-commerce, you got to take that money and pour it back into inventory. And so the amount of money you can take out of the business as a bootstrapper is really low if you're invested in growth. If you don't care about growing and you just want to do a lifestyle thing, sure. But like there's 1,000,001 ways to make money in other ways than just do a small e-commerce store. And I say that not to be negative about it, but to almost reflect that even in my own journey, the reason I said, okay, if you heard what I said at the very beginning, I said, how do we get to sustainable scale?
Right.
And in e-commerce, you're either venture backed, in which case you're doomed because you're now you got to be that 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20, which is already odds are stacked against you. And e-commerce is not even a venture backed. Like you can't even raise venture capital for e-commerce these days. It's not interesting. But then you want to do a lifestyle thing. Okay. But then whatever you make, you got to pour back into the inventory unless you take on some debt. Well, the problem with debt is if the world turns on you, now you have a problem with your debt holders and now your equity is crushed. So it's like, why? My question isn't how to do it. It's like, why do you want to do it? If on the other hand, you have an aspirational brand, you have a niche that you think you have an amazing idea in, and you're going all in on it, then you can be, the Dollar Shave Club, or one of these like really exciting specific stories where you can go sell to Procter and Gamble for 2, 3, 4, 500 million.
But own the brand at
But own the brand. But it's got to be big thinking. Like doing a nice little e-commerce store ain't it.
Do you think a big part of that is that the game has shifted in the last, let's call it, well, the insights have come to light that maybe this is a longer term problem that's been part of digital marketing, but
Right.
definitely in the last couple of years, you can't trust digital marketing.
Right.
And that old posit of like, I put, $10 in to get
Right.
$100 out, just as lies.
And it's changing all the fucking time. It's changing every,
like what works in what market at what
Exactly.
time of day.
exactly.
Can you
exactly.
trust the cookie?
Right. Exactly.
Like-
And you know what? I mean, that's why I keep going. I go back to, why did I say brand? Because with brand comes appeal, loyalty, word of mouth. Like you've got to build something. Like so that's why it's not your average idea of the day. Let me just start my little e-commerce store to sell a bit of this, a bit of that.
Yeah.
It's a long drawn out thing. There's way better things you can do with your time, especially in an AI world.
Yeah.
But if you're addressing it as, liquid death, or like very specific angle, saying this is missing in the market, I'm going to build a beautiful brand, I'm going to storytell to the max.
Right.
And that's huge, by the way.
That is huge.
If you can storytell and if you can have an angle, then you can scale and people will follow and tell people about you.
Right.
But the days of nice little e-commerce store and I'm going to build an 800K thing and maybe I'll make 200, and then after tax and after inventory I make nothing, negative, and that's not where things are at.
Last summer we had Jake Carls, who's one of the founders of Midday Squares. So we had him speak at a conference that I produced, and that was exactly his take on it. He was like, "Look, doesn't come natural for me to be in front of the camera shaking my butt." But we learned early on that if I don't do that, no one's going to know about us. And his take was every company who's starting out, especially in the consumer goods, he was like CPG particularly, he was saying every company to get market share, to build market share, needs to be a media company. Right. And that's part of the storytelling, but it's about the how as well. And that's an incredibly engrossing, difficult role to play, is to constantly be, marketing yourself.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's something that a lot of, we see it in tech. We started saying this off camera downstairs. I was saying early stage founders in software often cases are terrible at storytelling and don't understand how to relate the value prop of their product or service to their potential customers. So now you take that a step further and say, if anyone's trying to build, like you said, a lifestyle business out of e-commerce, and they're not able to take on that mantle of building an audience for their brand, and you can't outbid ad space,
right?
Or even if you do outbid it from competitors, it's not going to be reliably converting, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is a difficult place to be.
It is. And, I'd rather like spit out like frank advice, right? If any of your listeners are just like, hey, I've had this thing I've been wanting to try. I think those days are over. I think you either go, like anything, like the world's kind of converging, and I think you just have to have deep conviction and passion in what you're doing. And if you want to start an e-commerce company, you can. But you got to go all in. Like I don't think the whole like side store thing is it.
Yeah. You'll never have enough time. You'll never have enough effort. Okay, I have one more question about this. And what's your take on convenience burnout? The idea that the gig economy was exciting for a few years, and then in the last few years, as everybody's ordering everything on demand, it's less special. And the convenience can't demand a premium. Is that real? Is that a truism?
I mean, I think it's here to stay. Like, I haven't given it enough thought. I think, premium pricing for convenience, well, I'm just thinking of myself. I mean, I tend to pay it. Like, I don't know that it's everywhere and everything, but I just think like, if you're thinking of it from a customer lens, customers are always going to pay for convenience, I think, right? Obviously, it's up to the competitors to come in and start pricing out and offering you other ways to do it for cheaper. And then the customers will follow that train naturally. But I don't think the gig economy is going anywhere. I think this idea, and especially with these new generations, I mean, there's a feeling that they want autonomy, they want to control their time, they want to do it for multiple businesses, sporadically, the way they wake up, the way they feel. They got to decide. They want the power, and I think we're just in that sort of phase where the gig economy is probably going to be central infrastructure to anything else that comes up.
Nice. Well, it was awesome spending some time chatting. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
It's exciting to hear the journey that you've been on. And I think there are lessons for people that are considering, on one hand, I mean, well, I'll say this before we break, but like, I think it seems to a lot of people I've talked to as easier than ever to play armchair asset roll up, especially with things like the Shopify market. I don't know if that even exists, but it did recently.
Yeah, for a while, yeah.
Right? That website where you could find other Shopify websites, and it shows you the sales history up until some point, and then suddenly the stats are missing.
Right.
That's where everything tanked. But yeah, people can buy existing stores, and whether those user bases can be kickstarted or not is such a big question. But so I think people get into it, and I know we have a family member who tried this, and he had a tough run for a few years,
Right.
and he had to double down on one particular brand.
Yeah.
And suddenly it was like, well, now I'm not an e-com company. I'm just whatever he was selling company.
Right.
Who relies on digital sales.
Right. Which is back to basics, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Commerce is commerce. And the one thing I would add is like that, and maybe one of the biggest learnings around all of this is to keep things scrappy and do things with discipline, right? Bottom line focused. And so what we found is like buying stuff very disciplined. The acquisitions we've done at very reasonable prices have turned out to be winning acquisitions. We've always, I take a very measured view on debt these days, right? How do we handle that? How do you sensitize it if you take it on? Don't just assume 10% or 20% downside. What about 30, 40% in this crazy world? So just being prudent and disciplined and grounded serves everyone well, in this, especially in this crazy world.
Nice, man. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.